Hi, I'm here today with Ralph Horsley, who's an amazing professional artist, and we're going to speak to him about his career and how he got started. Hi, Ralph, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. And yourself?
I'm okay. I'm so pleased you can join us. So, do you want to tell anyone who's not familiar with your work what you actually do?
Okay, well, a brief summary. I'm a freelance illustrator. I work primarily in the print game industry, and the genre is mainly fantasy art, but that's a broad spectrum really. I do book covers, board games, card games, products you might have heard of, things like Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering. I've worked on Hearthstone, other World of Warcraft, TCG, various things like that, basically. So it's a niche industry, but it's a big industry in its own way.
So, how did you start off in your career? Where did you study, or if you studied at all, or you self-taught?
Well, I am self-taught. I studied up to up to A level. These days, there are I think there are clearly benefits of going into formal education because I think it gives you a focus, and it also means during that time that's what you're doing for those 3 years or whatever, or 4 years. That's what you're doing is that. Whilst of course, if that's not your sole focus, you've got to bring income in other ways, or it's just harder not to have that structured learning because you've got to create that structured learning for yourself.
Or what's your typical day, would you say?
Well, it depends on what I've got on at a particular time. I suppose the way a project works is obviously well, you get contacted by an art director who will obviously ask whether you want to take on the job, what the deadline is, what their specifications they're looking for. And say I was working on a cover or any piece of work, the first thing I do is a series of composition studies. These are sometimes referred to as thumbnails. So they're really just quick ideas, just getting a brief idea of what the composition might be. And once I've got those together, I would submit those to the art director. And leading on from that, I then work with a more fully realized sketch. I work traditionally. That's something that's well, it's a way I've enjoyed working, and it works well for me. So I'd work up a physical sketch, pencil drawing. That would then be sent off to the art director again. Probably as well, I'd accompany that with a color study. So what that entails is I would scan the sketch in. So everything's digitized, of course. Everything's sent off via email. I'd scan the sketch in. I'd print that out. I've got a laser printer and prime that, and then go over that with acrylics. The benefit of acrylics, you can do it quite quickly. It dries pretty much instantaneously, and then I can try out a number of different studies. So maybe do 2 or 3 different palette choices and color choices, and again they'll be submitted to the art director. So the whole point with this is that each stage, the benefit of submitting at each stage is that you make sure you're on the right track. It's about communication with the art director, and you don't want to go, they've given you a brief, but it's obviously only written, and you've got to come up with a visual interpretation. So you want to make sure those 2 things are gelling, and it's better to have that work done at that stage rather than the next stage, which is when you go and paint the final.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And of course, having done all that groundwork, I know what the palette's going to be like. I've made those decisions, so it's a lot easier. And of course, there's no surprises for the art director. They know what they're going to get. They know what the line work. They know what the sketch looks like. They know what the color choices are going to be. So hopefully, when you get to the end, they just go, "Great, love it. There we go.
Yeah.
We're going to pay you."
Yeah. How long is that timescale? How long is a project?
Well,
typically for one image,
so say a cover, say a book cover. We're talking, say, something like a role-playing game book cover, a Dungeons and Dragons book cover. So their print size is something like 8.5 by 11 inches. So I usually work twice that size. It would probably take me half a day to do the initial composition studies. Part of that time is gathering reference, getting all the source material together that you need for that, because that can be a certain amount of work, especially if you're working on a project that you're not familiar with. I mean, some projects like Dungeons and Dragons, I've worked on it so much, I don't need to do a lot of background research. I know what a dwarf looks like. I know what an orc looks like. So that bit's done. But for a new company, you might have to do a certain amount of research to make sure that you understand exactly what they're looking for. So composition studies might take a day. Then to work up the actual sketch, which again, I work twice actual size as a minimum. So a book cover, as I say, 8.5 by 11, I'll do it 17 by 22. And that will probably take me a couple of days to do that. And then the actual painting, and the colour studies would be in that time scale as well. They don't take long at all, really. Then the final painting would be 3 or 4 days. So
it's really quick.
But a day can be quite long. A day can be 10 or 12 hours sometimes. I mean, it can be quite a long day. So that's flexible. But yes, so the whole process really, I guess you could say something like 7 days or something is probably reasonable.
And would you sell them at a, like, when I meet you at the games convention, would you sell them there? That sort of thing,
Yes, absolutely. And certain, certainly say something like Magic the Gathering is a very, not only is the card game very collectible, but the actual artwork's very collectible. So there is a real spin-off benefit to me and to working traditionally. So I not only, I can sell the original painting, I can sell the colour studies, I can sell the sketches. So, there's a lot to be said for doing that traditionally, in a way that you don't have that benefit digitally. Digitally, you might be able to work faster, or you might be able to do other things, but you can lose some of those benefits.
So do you have an online shop as well for that sort of thing, not just at conventions?
I do, yes, I do. I use Etsy because it's nice and easy for me. I find that quite an easy shop. But a lot of artists would actually have their own. I mean, I've got my own website as well, but they would have their shop embedded in their website. I just prefer using Etsy. So.
Yeah, and I suppose that's raised the question: do you do a lot of social media?
Well, I think you've got to in this day and age, really, to some extent, and certainly try and keep that going. I'm not the best. There are some artists who are much better at marketing their brand, if you want to say. But yes, I think you've got to have some sort of presence, and I try and keep that ticking over. So for me, that's probably Instagram and Facebook and Twitter.
What I've seen of what you've done, it's good. So don't put yourself down. But it is that world now, isn't it?
There's a discipline there. I could, it's not the thing. I wanted to become an artist because I like painting. I don't like, going on the computer and doing social media. But that's the nature of all jobs. You've got elements which are less appealing. And that's the admin side of it. That's the business side of it, I suppose you could say.
So do you do all of that yourself as well? Do you need these business skills? And do you have to do your own accounts and things like that?
I do my own accounts.
Like financial accounts.
Yes, but I mean, certainly I know a lot of people would hire an accountant in. I've found it easy enough to do my accounts. There aren't too many transactions. It's not like running a shop where you'd have lots of micro transactions during the day. I mean, I maybe only have a few invoices in a month or something like that. And then of course things like the sales through my web shop maybe on top of that. So I've found it easy enough to do my own accounts over the years. But I do know there are benefits to getting an accountant in.
But that's good news for the young people who are thinking, oh my goodness, do I have to learn all of this? So it is quite achievable then. So they can pay some money to get an accountant.
And there is software out there you can use and things like that. But really, doing your own accounts, certainly starting off as a sole trader and doing that's not too difficult, really.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to young art learners?
Well, I think the key thing is practice. Practice does make perfect, really. That is as simple as that. The more you do, the better you'll get, and use reference and try and push your skill set. I mean, typically, the one bit of advice I tend to give to a lot of artists when they show me their portfolio is a single figure with no background doesn't tell anyone much about your skill set. You need to be doing more than that. You need to be showing story. Story involves multiple figures or background and do the things which are hard to do. So drawing horses is hard, drawing hands is hard. Do them more and more because that's where you'll get better. That's why most people can draw. They're reasonably competent can draw a single figure just stood there looking nice against the minimal background. Push yourself really, and yes, practice makes perfect.
Thank you, Ralph. So we've had some amazing advice from you there, and thank you so much.
Okay, well, good luck to everyone, and yes, all the best for your future careers, really.
Thank you.